All right, that being said, let's go ahead and get going here. So I did prepare an agenda for y'all, just what to expect during this webinar. This is the first time we're doing this. Some context for all of you. Um, we are located in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we're fortunate here in the Phoenix Valley to have customers located just down the street. And so what we've been doing these last several months is we've been conducting visitations to some of our customers, and we've been primarily going there to get a better understanding of how they use the product. What are their own use cases? What are some pain points and what are some things that they wish the product could do better? Or are there things the product can already do that they just didn't know about? And so the latter is what this webinar is all about. We frequently encountered questions, frustrations that were all about capabilities the product can already do. And so I'll be getting started today with just very general day-to-day things you can do to streamline your use of the Axosoft product. We'll all start on the same page. Some of you, I believe all of you are very intelligent human beings. You probably have a pretty good handle on the product already. I just want to make sure we all start on the same page. And hopefully throughout this webinar, you'll encounter some tips that you didn't know about, or you'll learn about modules that perhaps might be of interest to you. After that, we'll be going into more detail of grouping, filters, and views, and how you can combine all three of these to, you know, get the view that you're looking for, get the data that you need, and then get out. And then afterwards, we'll be talking about one of our newer features, Teams, which was introduced in 14.3. And just as a heads up, 14.4 was released this weekend. We will be sprinkling some of the updates that did come as a result of 14.4 throughout this presentation. And we'll also be touching on notifications. Notifications are usually a place where there's so much you can do with notifications. And so I'll touch on some of it. Brett will be going into even more detail about notifications. And then we'll also touch on two features that we often encounter that customers don't know about. These are the custom items tab and the related items. And so I'll be introducing what these features are, where you can find them, how you can use them. So I'll have two use cases that I'll try to go over, hopefully before the webinar is over. And then towards the end, Brett will take over and talk about Axosoft Help Desk and some of the other features that might streamline your use of Axosoft Help Desk there. All right, so again, please feel free to pose your questions. I will be transitioning over to the product, so one moment here. Thank you for your patience. All right. Great. So as I mentioned, we wanted to start off just very general, so we're all on the same page. And there are two key things that I want to make sure that everyone is aware of before they start either introducing new users to the product or before you log in next time, that you're aware of these two things. So the first one that I always want to make sure of, if you've been watching my quick start videos, if you've been through the sales process recently, then you probably already know about our keyboard shortcuts. So what I just did is I hit Shift and then question mark on my keyboard, and you'll be taken to this table of keyboard shortcuts. The ones that I see used most often are C for creating a new item, N then S to create a sub item for the selected item, and probably the most handy one is the work log item. So just hitting W on any selected item will take you to the work log. The work log being one of the most critical things that you can do in Axosoft Scrum in order to get the burn down to work, in order to have your remaining estimates, updates, in order to actually get a projected ship date. So be sure you're using work logs. We'll touch, if anyone has any questions on work logs specifically, we'll be more than happy to address those towards the end. Another way of accessing keyboard shortcuts, just in case you forget, is always available under our Help menu under Keyboard Shortcuts. Something here I just want to touch on as well. In 14.4, we completely revamped the new onboarding for when you add a user. So when you add a user, they will be taken to, I'm going to reset all tutorials here, and so we'll let the page refresh. And then throughout the presentation, I might be exiting out of tutorial prompts, so don't mind me. But we present them with a video that they can begin watching, and it just provides a great overview of what the product can do. This is probably something hopefully that makes it a lot easier for them to learn how to use a product, so you spend less time training them. But in any case, it walks them through the product, and you go step by step, how to create an item with the keyboard shortcut that I just showed you, and it steps them through, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to save and close out of here. I'm going to stop this tutorial, and I'll do this later. Do this later, and then stop this tutorial. Great. And so I highly recommend going through the tutorial if you're a user. I do know how to use a product, so for the sake of this webinar, we'll go ahead and keep going. And the other general tip that I want to make sure that everyone is well aware of is that we discover that many customers have numerous projects here in their organized panel that it scrolls quite for a considerable amount of time. And so each and every one of you probably has a subset of these projects that you're responsible for on a daily basis. And you want to make it as easy as possible to find. And so a very simple thing that you can do to make your life a little easier is to select the project that you are participating in, right-click, and add to favorites. And you can choose to just include this folder, or you can include the folder in all sub-projects as well. So in this case, I'm going to include child projects, and now transfer big files will be taken to my favorites. It's a very simple thing, but when we visited some of our customers, they didn't know about these two things, and we found that it considerably improved at least their daily usage of the product for users and administrators alike. All right, great. And so now that we've talked about keyboard shortcuts and adding to favorites, the last general thing I want to talk about is just the ability to right-click. All right, so many people didn't know that they could delete an item when you just right-click and you can just hit delete. They also have the ability, thanks to 14.4, to copy the URL for any item now. So this is a new 14.4 feature. It's one of the UX things that we included. So now you can copy the URL for the application itself here. Or if you are a Axosoft helpdesk user, then you can copy the portal URL as you would see it in the customer portal. Other things that you might see here, you can add, this is a quick way of adding a work log, a sub item. You see two things here. So the copy to bug, copy to incident, move to bug, move to incident. As a best practice here, we recommend that you copy an item over moving an item, unless you know exactly what you're doing. Moving an item, so in this case, I'm currently in the Scrum tab. These are all of my features. I have access to the bug tracker tab and the help desk tab, my defects and my incidents. This can go from one item type to another. In this case, this is where I am. I have the ability to move an item to a different backlog. If I move it, I'm deleting it though from the original backlog, and I won't have the original record. We always recommend copying because you can always close the ticket or the item in the original backlog, and you'll have the copy in the new backlog ready to get started in that workflow. And so you'll have the original record in the backlog where it originated, and you'll be able to continue working on the item wherever it's been escalated to. So those are a couple things that you can do. One other thing to keep in mind is that you can have this automated within workflow. This is a bit of a tangent, but I'll just touch on it really quickly. So I'm going to go to manage my workflow. This can be accessed through the tools menu as well. As you know, you have access to numerous workflows. You probably customize it to fit what you're looking for. I think I'm going to go to help desk actually. So I'm going to cancel that and go back to help desk. This makes the most sense. This is where you see a lot of escalation. And so by default, if you're using the starter workflow, we have 3 workflow steps. So closed resolved, we'll close it as a ticket. Closed defect, we'll close it as a bug. This is where you essentially have the ability to escalate an item. And so in the last section, other settings, this is the last tab of when you're editing a particular workflow step. Right now, I'm looking at closed defect. When an item moves to closed defect, I have the ability to copy it over to bug tracker. So it copies it over to the bug tracker item. It is still closed as an incident. And I'm able to, and that item starts on the first workflow step of the defect backlog of whatever project I'm in. So this can automatically be done by workflow. You don't necessarily just have to right-click and have it done. There are lots of other things that can be automated by workflow. If you have any questions about what could be automated, let us know, but we're going to go ahead and press on here. All right. Something that we encountered a lot of questions are, so I'll go ahead. Yep, got it. Something that we did with 14.3, you may have noticed, is the assign to field has changed. And instead of being just a static drop-down menu where you can look for folks, it's searching by what you're typing in. So if I wanted to look for Brett, I could just start typing his name. We're still collecting feedback. I mean, when we did this visitations, we saw that a lot of folks were used to having just a static list. Um, and we're curious to hear your feedback. If you have any thoughts on this, you can email it to team@axosoft.com. But that's the way it works right now. So if you just want to find someone, it's just a stylistic thing. You can just start searching for the individual in question. You can also notice that you can assign teams just by searching for them as well. And I will touch on teams in a little while here just to kind of give some more detail about what those entail. Okay, and then the last general thing that we always encourage customers to know about are these tabs. So maybe, I don't know if you've ever encountered, maybe someone on your team or you yourself have accidentally closed a tab and they have no idea how to get it back. And maybe after an hour or a day or so, you finally figured it out. For those of you that didn't figure it out already, you can always add a tab just by going to this funnel symbol here. For me, it's located underneath the Daily Scrum button, but this is where all your tabs are located. So the All Items tab, audit trails, emails, work logs. I'm going to show them all. And so work logs in particular, we always recommend that if you are tracking how much time folks are putting into their work, I mean, you have to get that information to get the burn down. But a lot of folks, this is very important. They feed this information into a billing system that, is responsible for payroll. And we give you the ability to, first of all, filter by whatever projects you have selected, whatever releases you have selected, and which customers. In this case, I think it makes more sense to have users or teams, maybe everyone, included in the filtering here as well. So if I want to just click on dev, I don't know that I'll get any data. Or, okay, includes everyone in dev, so that's perfect. But in any case, you can always filter this information based off if you only want to see defects, features, your custom items, which I'll touch on in a moment, incidents, and of course, you always have the ability to change this list. If you went through the sales process and you talked to me in particular, I always like talking about how you can change the list type. So billable and non-billable can be completely different categories. You can rename this and have it be whatever you want. And then, of course, you can always include a date filter. So Axosoft is able to export this as a CSV file that you can include into your billing system, whatever software you use, or if accounting has their own way of doing that, this is available to you. Audit trails. So when you delete an item, the item is gone forever, but luckily we have an audit trail with the record that the item was deleted in the first place. A best practice, if you ever do delete an item and you really needed that item, while there's no way of getting it back, you can always just copy the details of the item. So we always have a record of what the item said originally. And so it's quite possible to go back and recreate the item from what it was. So that's always an option there for you. And then All Items tab will include so think of it as a Venn diagram. So Scrum being one circle, defects being another, help desk the third. And if you have your custom item tab, then that will be included as well. But this will include all items that are related to whatever release project, whatever soft filtering you have enabled here in the Organize panel will be what you see in the All Items tab. Some folks didn't know about the All Items tab, and so that's why I'm bringing it up. Some of you probably use it every day, and it's like, Jonathan, why are you talking about this? That's because this is just one of those general things that the product can show you everything in question. We are working we are looking to add even more functionality into the All Items tab. So that's something to be on the lookout for next year. But just be aware that you can enable all items as well. Okay, and then the last thing I want to talk about, the last thing that I'll touch on here for the general is that there is another tab that you can enable here under System Options when you go to Tools, and that is your Custom Items tab. So that was under General. So you'll see here that Custom Items is not enabled by default. If you check it, you'll have access to it, and you'll be able to rename it. So I've seen custom items used as tasks, as test cases. I'll go into more detail about how that might be used, but that's something just to be aware of. We notice that some customers don't know that they have access to a completely untouched fourth item tab that has, just as you can have its own custom workflows associated to it, its own field templates. It's basically a complete separate tab, and it behaves just like anything else. You won't have it if you don't have access to Axosoft Scrum. So that is the one caveat there. If you have Axosoft Scrum, then you will have access to the Custom Items tab. Bug Tracker alone will not have it. Help Desk alone will not give you access to it. But if you do have Scrum, you will have access to the Custom Items tab. Okay, so that being said, we're going to hop back over to the Scrum tab. And I wanted to go ahead and get started about talking about grouping, filters, and views. And so something to keep in mind here. So often folks want to slice data in very particular ways. They want to, if you're just a daily user of the product, you want to just get the information that you need and then get out of it. If you're an administrator, if you're a project manager, a scrum master, you're probably looking for different pieces of information. And what we allow you to do is to kind of slice the main workspace however you'd like. And so something to keep in mind, of course, you have card view, which I'm going to hide these tips going forward. Thank you very much. And then you also have list view. List view gives you the ability to have numerous columns, something you may not know about, but you have the ability to edit, do inline editing. So if I wanted to right-click and assign this to someone, of course you can always drag and drop, but you get the idea that I can automatically assign this to Angie just by right-clicking and having that edited. Or if you want to do inline editing for the workflow step, same thing. You can inline edit and change it immediately. So that's a nice little tip in case you didn't know about that. But one thing that I want to do is group. So say I want to group by assigned to. Well, the formal way of going to grouping is with this gear in the upper right corner. So if you go to the gear, in this case, I'm going to go to the user story, but I also have the option to go to the customer, to group by customer fields or customer contact fields. And the most popular one that I see, the most useful one that I see is group by assigned to. And let me get rid of this filter. Group by user story assigned to. Oh, sorry. There we go. That makes more sense. Here we go. So these are all the users that I have assigned to this project. I can also look at a particular release. So I can look at sprint 1 and see the breakdown for my entire sprint. You'll notice that you get how many items each person is assigned to, how many hours have been worked, how many hours are remaining, and it gives you a percent bar for their progress. So just at a quick view, you can see how everyone's doing at a high level for a particular release. And this is just by grouping. Something that I've also seen is maybe you want to look at all projects, all releases. Perhaps you're interested in grouping by a project. This probably makes more sense for help desk. So this is something that I do, for example, every day. Since I'm in the sales queue, we get items that come into help desk, but support also gets tickets. Dev also gets bugs, and so we want to report them in a different way. And so what we do is we group it by project, and I'm only concerned with items that are inside of sales, and then not so much what's inside of support. I'm still interested in looking at what's in support, and just pretend I'm in the help desk. I know I'm under Scrum, but since the view is identical, and I know that this kind of does a trick here, I'm still interested in seeing if there's any outstanding support tickets that I need to be aware of, but I'm able to just worry about what is happening under sales. And so that brings a question like, that's great. So I build this view. How do I save this view? And so that's where views come into play. And so right now, I have a couple soft filters enabled. So I have transfer big files release selected, all projects selected. If I'm interested in including any additional filters that I have created, we have 4 here by default, so I can see everything that's not closed, for example, so that simplifies things further. And you can include other filters that you've created as well. But if I want to save this view and just snap back to it at any moment, I highly recommend, this is the best practice, that you save a view. So in this case, I'm going to do TBF assigned to. So you'll notice that when I was saving this view, that you have the option to be as detailed as possible. Like, what do you want Axosoft to save? Do you want it to save what the details panel looks like? Do you want it to save the grouping? Be as choosy as you like. In my case, I always just choose everything by default. And so if I were to navigate away from so I'll go to a different view that I have saved here. It goes to card view, goes to a different project. But if I can go back to what I had previously, it'll snap back right to it. And so this is great because if you're an administrator, if you're a scrum master, if you're a project manager, and you have a view that you want every single one, or you want most of your team to have access to, all you need to do when you create that view is you'll have the option to make it private or not private. So just uncheck the box if you wanted to have it accessible by everyone in the project. Keep in mind, security roles will still be in play. So even if you enable someone, even if you give a view to someone, if they don't have access to view items in that particular project, then they will not view those items. So that's something to keep in mind as well. All right, let's see. So we talked about grouping is available in not just the main workspace, but it's also available in the customer portal. And so something to keep in mind when you access, maybe you have an internal portal that everyone has access to. That's where they submit bugs, or that's where they submit help desk items. Each customer has a different arrangement, so it really just varies on who you are and what you guys do. But customers can go in and group based off of status, which is something that might be incredibly useful because immediately draws your eyes to what is open and I can ignore, but still reference what has been closed. There is a best practice here. So if you were to go to Axosoft portal, so portal.axosoft.com, which is where you can go at any time to submit a bug, a defect that you found, but you'll notice that you're immediately taken to the wiki. And if you were to go to the backlog, that we automatically group things by release. And so this is something that we've done on purpose. And this is something that we can teach, that I will teach you how to do just right now. And so how do I create a default view for all my customers when they log in for the first time? So that's the question we're trying to answer. And so that's done by, you're going to go to Tools, Customer Portal. Something to keep in mind here. Basically what we did before I go there is we created a dummy customer. So let's take a look here. So let me take a look at Bob Sanders. So Bob Sanders is a dummy customer that I created. When he logs in, he sees a particular view that he set. So if I were to log out, welcome back to Bob Sanders, but this is initially what I did. So I'm going to log in again. So I've logged in. I'm Bob Sanders. And this is the view that I've created. I can change my view if I want. So if I want to group by something else, basically what we're looking for you guys to do is create the view that you want your customers to see. Because basically what we're going to do is we're going to copy the settings for Bob Sanders and have it be applied as a default for everyone else. And so when you're going through each item tab, go through, and if you want to group by status here, which is very helpful. If you want to group by something else here, it's all up to you. But once you've created someone that you can pinpoint to, so in my case it's Bob Sanders, go to Customer Portal, go to Customer Portal Settings. All right, and then, yep, there you go. So here I have use the selected customer context current view setting. So right now I have Bob Sanders set as a default. So essentially what this does is Bob Sanders, his view, the view that I'm saving right now at this moment will be what is seen by all customers when they log into the customer portal. If Bob were to change his view this point moving forward, that's okay. That's fine. We're only copying it at the moment that we find him and hit save. And so and then another thing to keep in mind, so it's very useful for just kind of introducing customers into your customer portal. If they do navigate away from the view, it will be lost, but you can always have the ability to go back and just reset the settings for that particular user. But it's just something we wanted to show you guys if you wanted to create a default view for your customers when they log into the customer portal. If there's any details, Brett will touch on additional details there as well when we get towards the help desk section of the webinar, which will be in a couple minutes here. All right, and that leaves me with a few other things. I'll also get to notifications, but I did want to get into more details about Teams. So Teams, from a development standpoint, it was very it was like an octopus. It had tentacles that extended everywhere, and there were lots of things that we had to change. But from your point of view, Teams are actually pretty straightforward, and they behave a lot like projects. So if you're not using Teams, we highly recommend that you do. It gives you the ability to assign items to a group of people. And so first of all, keep in mind that you can create as many. So you have all your users, of course, that you've created or that they've invited or that they've signed in, and you can group them however you like. So in my case, I have them organized by pure chat dev, transfer big files dev. I also have a sales and support team and testers. You can even get even smaller. Maybe there's a team awesome, team fantastic within pure chat dev. Knowing their personalities, they kind of get creative with that. But the added benefit that you have with teams is that first of all, you can create anywhere where you can assign an item, something. When you can assign something to an individual, you can now assign a team. When I first began the webinar, I talked about how this menu has changed, and if you start just searching by a team, teams can be assigned to an item. So much like teams can be assigned to an item, they can also be assigned to a notification. They can also be assigned to a filter. And so this is just something to keep in mind. It's really straightforward for you guys. I mean, you just kind of organize your team into team. You can, and everything else just is built around it. So if you want to have particular filters based off of, only what a team sees, then all you need to do is just specify that when you're looking into the recipients. So for example, assign to, it's just one of the options is either sales or support or dev team. It's really straightforward. We always recommend that if you have notifications, if you're an older customer and you've been, grandfathered into Teams, that you update your notifications so that it includes Teams or that it excludes Teams. It's all up to you. Okay, and the last thing that I'll talk about before I hand it over to Brett are the custom items tab and the related items tab. So let's go ahead and bring back our custom items. And so I did recently post a blog post that talked about test management, test cases. And so I wanted to kind of bring that into this webinar as well. So right now there's absolutely nothing in the custom items tab. It is empty. We just created it. We just enabled it. I don't expect any items to be inside it. But essentially what I can do is I can create, say, in this case, I've seen folks use this for tasks. So they'll create a list of things that they just have to do. It's a to-do list. And the workflow that they use is done and not done, or not done and done. I've also seen this used as a test case. So say this is a test case 1. So I'm creating this test case right now it's under all projects. Let's go ahead and reassign it to transfer big files. And essentially to provide some context, the way our QA team here, during every single release, there's just a series of tests that they have to run. It's a default. It's just every single release they have to go through these sets of tests. And so what they do is they have a folder filled with test cases. And so in this case, the way I have it organized at the moment is under custom items, under transfer big files, I have a series of test cases that I can build out. And what they do is they do a detailed copy of the folder, which will copy all the items and all the settings. They will move all the items that have been copied into their QA sprint. And then transfer big files copy is down here. It's not one of my favorited projects. They'll move all those items into the QA sprint, and then they'll just begin working on it and then moving it through the workflow. So I hope that makes some sense. I know I didn't quite relate it, but one of the questions we get is like, that's great, but how do I relate this back to maybe, what if this is a test case for a user story that we're building? How do I relate them back to the origin? Maybe it's a defect. And so that's where related items comes into play. And I just want to make sure that you all know where to find related items and how to enable them. So related items are available through the details panel. And if you don't have it enabled, that's because it's disabled by default. So if you go to Tools, System Options, and if you look under the details panel, if you don't have it enabled, then all these boxes will be unchecked. So please go forward and check all these boxes, and you'll have access to the Related Items tab. The Related Items tab essentially it's different than a sub-item. If you want a very rich and dependent relationship between two items, then the best option for you is to create a sub-item under a parent item. If you just want to create a link, if you just want to acknowledge that certain subsets of items are related to one another, then that's where Related Items comes into play. So right now, for example, I have a related item to custom item 1, and it's custom item 2. What happened here? Well, it's been duplicated, and that makes sense. Um, in the original project, I had the transfer big files, and I created a transfer big files copy. And so it copied the item from the original. So I could see that if I double click on it, I can pull up the original item and vice versa. To give you another example here, so let's say I'm in the Scrum tab, and I want to add a defect that was created as a result. So I want to add a related item. I want to say that this is related to. I can search for the defect that's already been created. And so let me search for, let's do that one. Search do 100. You create the relationship, save it, and now the bug is there. So for user story 22, defect 100 is associated to it. And if I wanted more details, this is just a general best practice to keep in mind. You can always dock any one of these panes to the bottom of your screen. And so the advantage of doing this for related items, at least, is that you get some more details. So you can see what type of user story it is. You can also associate what workflow step they happen to be in. So it just kind of gives you more information about what's going on. If you want more information about test case management and custom items, I went into considerable detail on the blog on my recent blog post. So you can go to axosoft.com/blog. Okay, and so that leaves the next section of the presentation, which will be Brett. Brett, anytime. Just one moment here to transition.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Brett Goldman, and sorry, Jonathan's headset just slid off my head. I'm one of the trainers here, and also one of the members of the customer success team. And I want to talk about just some of the things that always come to us as questions, and just some advice that we have that are common points of confusion, or just ways that we can really do some good things in Axosoft, as well as kind of shine a light as to how we use Axosoft as the help desk utility, just to actually support our own customers, because it actually works out incredibly well for our not only our support team, but also for our sales team. We all use Axosoft really for all of your communications to us. They all get pulled into our system, so then we can handle it just using a good, well-defined workflow. All right, so let me just go ahead and take over. I'm going to switch just to the help desk tab. Let me just switch back just to all projects. This is just a sample database. We've got a couple of really simple items that are here. I don't know if any of them, yeah, so some of them were created just right through the customer portal. Some of them were created by emails where we were working with customers right there as well. So a couple things that we definitely recommend that have helped us out quite a bit in support. And actually, we kind of even made a couple small enhancements here actually in 14.4. And one of those is if I dock the emails tab in the bottom window, because we have a little bit more real estate horizontally, we can actually add a preview pane just to the window. So this is great because I can just quickly switch between items and always have the most recent email right there, so that I can just go and right ahead respond to the customer. Because a lot of times what we do is that if we're communicating with the customer, let me also add attachments and maybe even the description here. That's really pretty much all that we work with when talking with customers. Sometimes they'll send us an attachment as well. But if we keep these all just right here down at the bottom, we can really just quickly tab between each option and then see just the most recent response. We don't have to go select the item, find which one was the most recent, and pop it out into a new window, which are all things that we had to do prior to 14.4. A couple other neat things about this is just you can, of course, use the keyboard shortcuts, like Jonathan mentioned, just to do J and K, just to quickly browse through each. And then if you ever want to reply to the customer, you can use the keyboard shortcut R, which will then just go and reply directly from the email. So right there, if I've got 10 items, I can just quickly find which ones are the most urgent, and I want to get right back to them. Which ones are not immediate, where a customer is having issues, or something that it might take a little while longer just to go and write a response to. I can quickly navigate through those, click keyboard shortcut R, reply to the customer, and I haven't even taken my hands off the keyboard to do that. All right. One of the things, we actually had this set up as the default for all of our new accounts, but we definitely just recommend that if you are using it as a help desk, just to have some other method, so that when your customers are replying to you, that the email is in fact going and reopening the item. I believe Jonathan touched on this, but just for each of your email accounts, if you just go here. Sorry, this is a sample database, so that's why it's not pulling up. But just under actions, just make sure that you have this option just set up just to change the item's workflow step. And then just if you have some method just to go ahead and reopen an item or place an item in a particular workflow step, just whenever a new email is received. That way, you're just making sure that whenever you do respond to a customer and you close an item, that it then goes and is actually reopened if that customer ever responds to you. And then definitely from a just from a standard help desk perspective, it usually helps quite a bit just to have a filter that just looks for items that aren't closed. So this way, whenever I do respond to a customer and then close out an item, it'll just go ahead and remove it from my view, and then I can go and help other customers right there. So it's you can really see the progress that you're making just to everything that's in your inbox. Right now, this filter is just very simple. It's just looking for everything that's not closed. Then, of course, if I do have a customer that replies just to an item, we want to have it automatically move just to a step where it would kind of reopen it. So for instance, if I just, close an item that I was working with a customer and I thought that the issue was resolved, we have this option here that just says under other options, just to go ahead and say that if a new email comes in for the item, just bump it back to customer responded. That way it's kind of reopening the item. And since I've got this in my filter, if the customer ever replies to me, since I'm just looking at everything that is not closed, it'll reopen the item, and I can then go ahead and get right back to that customer. If that's the case, you can also just set up color coding, based on the status. So actually, I don't have colors currently on there. But that way you can just quickly just see which ones are new items and which ones are items that your customers have then actually just replied back to you. So you just make sure that everyone's getting the due attention. All right. A couple other things that we use quite a bit here for help desk, as well as being really helpful for any of your developers or project managers, that's really overlooked quite a bit, is our filter matched notifications. So filter matched notifications sounds a bit weird and contrived, but really what it is exactly that. It allows us to send off a notification for any items using that meet the conditions of a filter. And this is great because it's very, very flexible, because since the filters in Axosoft are very flexible as well, we can create a very specific set of conditions and then just go ahead and schedule out notifications for whenever those conditions are met. So for instance, something that we do here at with our help desk implementation is that when a customer emails into us, we'll do our best just to go get them the help they need, and hopefully we can resolve the issue right then and there. If we can't, and there's something that I need to do some further testing on, or if we're waiting to hear back from some other party, could be a developer, could be someone IT. We want to make sure that we just go ahead and move the item just to be in progress, just meaning that I'm actually working on the item, or I've already got back to the customer, but there's still action on my part. Um, you know, One of the things that we, of course, don't want to do at this point is then forget about this item that is in progress and tell a customer, oh, hey, I was going to get back to them with an answer, and then never do that. That's one of the worst things you can do, just to your customers, just to kind of break some of that trust that you have. And one of the ways that we can do this is actually just go ahead and create a filter match notification that'll look for everything that is in progress. So we can create a very simple filter. I'll just call this in progress items. All right, and I'll just set, where the status is in progress. Um, Something else I personally like to do for this filter is because, I usually just set it up to go off every Tuesday. And I usually like to just say, okay, if it's created, if the item was created, more than, we'll just say if it's older than 24 hours, just so then, so then, anything that I create that morning isn't going to really be yelling at me. Sorry, I think this keyboard didn't actually like it, so let's go. Yeah, so I'll just say it's 2 days later. Okay, so of course we just created the filter, which would meet all these actions, and then we can create the notification using that filter. So for this, I'll just go to notifications, manage. We're in the help desk tab, so it'll just be for incidents. And I'll just call this my in progress alert. And of course, we're not looking for any changes for the item. We're just looking to see all items that match the filter, and just go ahead and select my in progress items that we had set up. So since we're not looking for any changes, we have to schedule these out. So we would just need to state when we want to schedule these. Ours actually goes just every Tuesday morning, just to make sure that we catch up on everything. And we can say, okay, it'll be waiting for me at 9 in the morning, just when I get there. All right. So one of the great things about this particular notification is that I can set it up to go just for the assigned to, or just to the customer or whoever created the item. And what it'll do is that it'll look for all of the items that are in progress, but only send the subset of items that I'm actually assigned to. So this way I can set just this one notification rule. And now all of the members of my sales team, customer support team, they will receive just a notification if they have anything that's currently in progress that they need to go and follow up on. And just by having one simple notification rule, I've given them all those pieces of information. It's really helpful just because if you really want to cut down on some of the bulk of notifications that you do receive, but you want to just pulling up some of our documentation. But if you want to make sure that whatever you're getting is a little bit more useful, what it will actually do is that since it can send out a notification for multiple items. I'm just going to pull up an example of a filter match notification. Since it's actually sending out a notification for multiple items, you'll actually get a very easy to read table just for all of your open items. So if you have 10 items that are in progress, you're not going to flood your inbox by having 10 different notifications. It's just one simple notification and just has a list of all those items that you have. So it's very, very helpful. Really just for any scenario you would want to watch, maybe like high priority items that are due this week. It's very easy to set up. Just create a filter that looks for those, and then just go ahead and add that as a filter match notification. So definitely, if you have any questions right here, you can just send it to us just through the chat window, and we'll just be sure just to go through everything and send you an email, with a response or anything. If you do have any questions over anything that we've covered today, and maybe there's something that you're playing around with some of these new features, and then you have a question about something that we showed here, definitely let us know. You can always email us just at team@axosoft.com, or support@axosoft.com. Those all go to the same place, and we'd definitely be happy to help with any of those questions.